There we go. We're live. Checking audio. Okay. Hello, everyone. So, the question for tonight is fluoride bad? And I don't know. I found out about fluoride when I was in college, and my sort of take on it since then was that pretty much all unnecessary chemicals added to your body is genuinely bad and not and dangerous. And but there is a long history to fluoride and its prevalence in the United States, and there's definitely some shocking things to find out because I mean, growing up, you're taught that fluoride in the water is good for your teeth. It's good for your bones. It's good for everything in your body. But the reality of having a bunch of fluorine added to not just your water, but your toothpaste and a multitude of other things, dental products, things when you go to the dentist are fluorinated. It tends to stack up and have very real issues. So ever since college, I have been getting fluoride out of my toothpaste, out of my water, trying to get it out of my shower head. Any interaction that I have with what would be fluorinated water, I try to personally limit that. And I've been doing that for a lot of years. And I've been against fluorinating water since I found out about it. Now, we're going to get into a little bit of the history of how this has come to pass. There's a really great video on the shocking history of water fluoridation, which honestly is a really great documentary. The guy who did this did a bang up job. But it begs the question of, does the government have a right to essentially medicate you? You know, the whole country is sort of, if you think about adding fluoride because it's good for your teeth, what if you don't want fluorine added to your water because I don't care if it's good for my teeth? You know, it is a form of medication. They use it in sort of medical places like dentist's office. Do they have a right to just do that to you without your consent or your approval or your knowledge that it's even happening? Most Americans don't even know that what is in their tap water. I mean, there's kind of a running joke that if you drink tap water, something's wrong with you. And there's a ton of hilarious memes around tap water. And most people I know, I mean, they try to avoid tap water at all costs. I mean, I buy water. A lot of people I know buy water. I get people onto buying non-fluorinated water and drinking that exclusively. But let's get into a little bit of history here. I have a pretty, I wouldn't say comprehensive, because there's just so many angles, like why in reality has nothing to do with your, when you look at it, the government doesn't care about your teeth. Let's be real. They don't care about your teeth or your well-being or trying to make you the best that you can be. An exact opposite. Throughout history, it's the exact opposite. So let's watch this. We're not going to watch the whole thing.
Whenever there is risk, there should be consent. No matter how much the benefits could outweigh these risks, if there is risk involved, the individual should be given a choice, especially in health and medicine. The Nuremberg Code was developed specifically to prevent these interventions from happening without consent. Today, this is a popular topic of discussion, whether or not we have informed consent for a mandated medical intervention. But the truth is, we should have been talking about this for the last 80 years, since the government has been administering a medical intervention without our consent, and for many, even without their knowledge. Of course, the substance I am referring to is fluoride in the public water supply. Many will be quick to assume that anyone who thinks this could be a problem for our health is a nut, a quack, and a conspiracy theorist. I mean, just read any government webpage on the topic. The science is settled. Low-dose fluoride is good for our teeth. In fact, the CDC has put water fluoridation on their list of the 10 greatest health achievements of the 20th century. I gotta hand it to them. It does fit right in with the rest of the list. All of the experts agree that it's the consensus, and for all of these reasons, we should be very skeptical. If you enjoy our content, please consider donating to us through Patreon or one of our crypto addresses, and give us a follow on Twitter and TikTok, all of which you can find in the description. Let's start from the beginning.
Here are the facts.
Fresh out of UPenn School of Dental Medicine in 1901, Massachusetts native Dr. McKay moved to Colorado Springs to practice dentistry. Upon arrival, he noticed the Colorado Springs locals had disgusting brown stains on their teeth, something he had not seen on the East Coast. These stains were permanent and severe, with some residents' teeth looking as if they had been covered in chocolate candy. McKay found the area lacked interest in investigating it, but eventually, McKay garnered attention from local dentists of what became known as the Colorado brown stain. He moved to St. Louis, Missouri in 1905 to study orthodontistry, and again noticed the same brown stained teeth in the locals. He then moved back to Colorado Springs and continued his quest for answers. The ball really got rolling in 1909 when esteemed dental researcher Dr. G.V. Black decided to see the phenomenon for himself in Colorado. When he first heard about the Colorado brown stain, he did not believe it, as there had been no mentions of it in the dental literature. He went to Colorado because a study the Colorado Springs Dental Society conducted showed that 87.5% of nearly 3,000 local children had brown stained teeth. Upon arrival, Black walked around town and conversed with local children with the intent of studying their teeth. He noticed the condition was blatantly prominent in every group of children. He felt as though the Colorado brown stain was a serious deformity these children were stuck with for life. In that time, McKay and Black made two important discoveries. They found that Colorado Springs residents who had unstained permanent teeth were not at risk for developing stained teeth. However, local children who were waiting for their permanent teeth to come in were at risk of developing the stains. They also found that, despite the residents having grotesque teeth in appearance, these teeth were incredibly resistant to decay. McKay began to theorize that something in the water supply was staining residents' teeth brown, but the mystery was still a long way from being unraveled. McKay's theory was bolstered in 1923 when he met with parents in Oakley, Idaho, who claimed their children's teeth had been stained brown shortly after a communal water pipeline was constructed for Oakley residents. McKay analyzed the water and found nothing unusual, but still advised the borough administrators to abandon the pipeline and use another spring for water. A few years later, the children of Oakley were developing healthy, white teeth. Next, McKay and Dr. Grover Kempf of the United States Public Health Service traveled to Bauxite, Arkansas to investigate more reports of the brown stain. Bauxite was a company town supporting the Aluminum Company of America. Remember the Public Health Service and the Aluminum Company of America because they will be important to the story later on. Upon investigation, the children of Bauxite had the disordered teeth, but the children of neighboring towns did not. The two doctors investigated the water supplies, but again, found nothing peculiar. McKay and Kempf filed a report of their findings, which reached the chief chemist of that aluminum company, H.V. Churchill. Churchill was concurrently trying to dispute claims that aluminum cookware was toxic. He became worried that the happenings in Bauxite would give his opponents more ammo to prove that aluminum was poisonous. Churchill decided to head over to Bauxite and test the water using photospectrographic analysis, a method more sophisticated than McKay's. Churchill's assistant conducted the test of Bauxite's water and found that it had high levels of fluoride. Churchill said to his assistant, "Whoever heard of fluorides in the water? You have contaminated the sample. Rush another specimen." His assistant obliged and did another assay of the water, and again found that it had been contaminated with high levels of fluoride. In 1931, Churchill wrote a 5-page letter to McKay detailing his findings of fluoridated water and instructed McKay to collect samples from towns experiencing the notorious brown stain. Within months of collecting and analyzing water samples, McKay's 30-year mission came to an end. High levels of fluoride in water supplies indeed caused the discoloration of tooth enamel, now referred to as fluorosis. Before this time, it had been known that fluoride was one of the most toxic compounds in Earth's crust. It was also a byproduct of many industrial processes, most notably the production of aluminum. By the 1920s and 30s, it was the subject of multiple regulations and lawsuits. This became very consequential in 1938 because of the aluminum industry's importance due to the Second World War. Also in 1931, the Public Health Service sent dentist H. Trendley Dean to the West to study the effects of fluoridation on people's teeth. He found that towns with higher amounts of natural fluoride in the water had citizens with fewer cavities. He also found that these people's teeth were often discolored and eroded, but I guess that's neither here nor there. The Mellon Institute, the Aluminum Corporation of America's research lab in Pittsburgh, commissioned Gerald J. Cox to conduct a study. He fluoridated his lab rats' drinking water and pretty much just decided that their cavities had been reduced. He rushed to conclude that this was proof of fluoride preventing cavities. Although fluoride was found to prevent cavities, the general consensus at the time was that fluoride was a poison. In 1936, the Journal of the American Dental Association stated, "Fluoride at the 1 part per million concentration is as toxic as arsenic and lead. There is an increasing volume of evidence of the injurious effects of fluorine, especially the chronic intoxication resulting from the ingestion of minute amounts of fluorine over long periods of time." In 1939, Cox.
So that's saying minute amounts over long periods of time. And I mean, up until I found out that there was fluoride in the water and that it was dangerous, I was drinking tap water and it was fluorinated. And that result is just saying minute amounts, diluted amounts. The entire nation, most water districts up until recently, the last few years, have been fluorinating minute amounts of fluoride into water the entire life, my entire life. This has been going on long before I was born. This is happening to almost every American in the country. And this even happens in some other countries. But this is crazy, right? But hey, there's cash on the screen. Maybe that's got something to do with it.
Who had been getting paid by an aluminum company facing fluoride lawsuits, came out publicly to propose mandatory water fluoridation. Other bought and paid for scientists did the same. Around that time, extensive studies of thousands of children confirmed that there was also an inverse relationship between regions where the water supply was found to contain fluoride and the rate of tooth decay. Later, other studies showed that towns that switched from fluoridated to non-fluoridated water experienced increased tooth decay. Researchers sought to put enough fluoride in the water where tooth decay would be prevented, but fluorosis would not occur. With more accurate ways to measure fluoride concentrations, it was determined that water fluoride content of less than 1 parts per million was enough to prevent tooth decay, but not enough to cause severe fluorosis in most people. This determination was later proved wrong when the CDC analyzed the teeth of the nation's teens and found that 40% of them had some degree of dental fluorosis with cloudy spots, streaks, and even brown teeth and tooth erosions. Interestingly, much of this data had come from places with naturally fluoridated water in the form of calcium fluoride. The manufacturing byproduct that gets dumped into water supplies is sodium fluoride. The metal that binds fluoride is a key determinant of its chemical and biological properties. So to extrapolate that sodium fluoride would have the same effects seems like a convenient oversight. We can also look at the work of Weston A. Price, a pioneer of dental research who became famous for his work in the 1930s. In his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, he details the experiences of people who transitioned from more traditional diets to industrialized ones. Notably, even without Western dentistry, societies on their ancestral diets suffered very few cavities. Price mainly attributed this to what he called the displacing foods of modern commerce: white sugar, white flour, and vegetable oil. These foods took up space in the diet where nutrient-dense whole foods would normally be, specifically those rich in fat-soluble vitamins that are now known to play a major role in dental health. Another variable that is to be looked at is toothbrushing. Before World War II, brushing your teeth was not a common American habit. However, during the war, soldiers were instructed to brush their teeth. They brought this routine home with them, and that is when toothbrushing became prevalent. During World War II, fluoride lawsuits piled up, and the Journal of the American Medical Association came out and said, "Fluorides are general protoplasmic poisons, changing the permeability of the cell membrane by certain enzymes."
Here's where it gets crazy.
Over the coming years, the Public Health Service would adopt an extremely pro-fluoridation stance. The Public Health Service was under the jurisdiction of the Treasury Department. The Treasury Secretary at the time was none other than billionaire Andrew Mellon. Mellon was the founder of the Aluminum Corporation of America, the biggest firm in the aluminum industry.
And y'all don't have a problem with this? You just gonna let this slide?
In 1945, after much debate and discussion from public health agencies, a vote passed to fluoridate the drinking water of Grand Rapids, Michigan.
On file with the County Dental Society are statements from members of the medical profession over and over again that they have seen no ill effects from the fluoridation of the Grand Rapids water. The dental office.
Grand Rapids became the town with the first purposely fluoridated water supply in the world. After 15 years of a study of 30,000 Grand Rapids children, researchers found that the rate of dental cavities declined by 60%. In 1947, President Truman appointed Oscar R. Ewing as the head of the Federal Security Agency, which encompassed the Public Health Service. Ewing and the Public Health Service launched the push for mandatory fluoridation and mobilized establishment groups of dentists and doctors. Ewing's goal was to unite the establishment center and the respectable left to advocate against the right-wing anti-fluoridation kooks, such as the John Birch Society, which was outspoken on the matter. To manage the public relations for this campaign, he hired none other than the father of public relations, Edward Bernays.
Wow.
Here comes some more insanity. Before Ewing arrived in Washington, he was the longtime legal counsel and at the time chief legal counsel of the Aluminum Corporation of America. His legal efforts for the company were earning him $750,000 per year, or the equivalent of just under $11 million in today's money. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but this seems like a minor conflict of interest. We could make an entire video on Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, as he changed marketing forever by transforming the public's opinions on topics instead of just trying to sell products. Bernays is quoted saying, "Large numbers of persons will follow the advice of their doctors because he, the PR man, understands the psychological relationship of dependence of man on their physicians." Bernays also said, "If you can influence the leaders, either with or without their conscious cooperation, you automatically influence the group which they sway." Before his campaign, the public thought of fluoride as the main ingredient of rat and bug poison. After, Bernays had convinced the public that fluoride was a safe way to build healthy teeth. After a successful push for water fluoridation, Ewing went back to his lucrative position as head legal counsel for the notorious aluminum firm. In the 1940s and 50s, the pro-fluoridation Satanists were vindicated with the controlled experiment of Newburgh and Kingston. These were two neighboring towns in upstate New York with similar demographics and similar rates of all diseases. Newburgh got the fluoride and Kingston did not. The good news is that 10 years later, Newburgh children aged 5 to 9 had much fewer cavities than those in Kingston. The bad news is that rates of cancer and heart disease in Newburgh were also significantly higher than those in Kingston. A federal study in 1956 found almost double the rate of pre-malignant bone defects in young males of Newburgh compared to Kingston. Anyone who brought attention to these findings were labeled as a kook by the establishment. By the 1950s, 87 U.S. cities fluoridated their public water supply. After the 1950s, 2/3 of the reservoirs in the United States were fluoridated, and the goal of government was universal fluoridation.
We'll stop it there. There's a lot more awesome points that this guy makes, but wow, the guy. So we have fluorination in our country because of the aluminum industry wanting to off-put the problems in their manufacturing, which is excess fluorine through fluorosilicic acid or whatever, which is also in the fertilizer industry. But because of the aluminum industry, we have, and Edward Bernays, we have fluorination throughout our entire country, which that study clearly showed that one city was given the fluorination, increased cancers, increased diseases and problems. Less tooth decay, maybe, but all the other things go up incredibly. Look at America. You're talking about fluorination since the 1950s in 2/3 of every single reservoir, maybe even more since his reference. Talking about 80s and 90s, early 2000s, how many reservoirs were fluorinated? And look, increase in cancers. Look at, everybody wants to cure cancer. Maybe get the fluorine out of the water. Maybe you might cure cancer. I mean, it's crazy, man. So one of the references is, this is a good question. Is the Nuremberg Code law in the United States? And the answer is no. It's guidelines. So the Nuremberg Code is a set of ethical research principles for human experimentation created by the court in U.S. versus Brandt, one of the subsequent Nuremberg trials that were held after the Second World War. The Second World War, right? Well, what you saw right there is one city got fluorinated and the other city didn't. And were the residents informed? So they immediately broke this by just using an American city as a guinea pig and a test subject. Though it was articulated as part of the court's verdict in the trial, the code would later become significant beyond its original context. In a review written on the 50th anniversary of the Brandt verdict, J. Katz writes, "A careful reading of this judgment suggests that the authors wrote the code for the practice of human experimentation wherever it is being conducted." Now, on a personal level, to some degree, it's an overview. But, you know, what if the government chooses to medicate a whole city without their knowledge? Is it illegal? Does somebody go to jail? Do we have any rights or any defense or any protection at all? Is it illegal to give someone medication without them knowing? Giving someone medication without their knowledge carries serious legal ramifications. But it sounds like that's just individual to individual. That's if you like try to poison somebody. Learn how intent, the substance used, and results harm shape accountability. Administering medication to an individual without their knowledge or explicit consent is a serious action with significant legal consequences. Now, there's been tons of class action lawsuits where companies are doing something and it harms a group of people. You know, what was that movie? Erin Brockovich, right? She goes out, the cows are dying. It's all around Teflon. And we'll definitely do an episode on Teflon, but it's crazy, you know, how the aluminum industry is doing something and it's causing the problems in the water. There's results in the people's teeth, and somehow in their retarded mind, they think that, okay, well, at least they have less cavities, even though it's browning and pitting, and, well, they got stronger teeth, so maybe we can off-put all these damage that we're doing to the environment, and we could just figure out how to make it publicly acceptable throughout the country, and then we're off the hook, right? Criminal charges for unconsented medication administration. Giving someone a substance without their consent can trigger a range of criminal charges, even if no lasting harm was intended or caused. The most direct charge is often battery, which is defined as an intentional or unwanted physical contact, the act of causing someone To unknowingly ingest the substance constitutes non-consensual contact and therefore fits battery. You know, this is where you normally see class action lawsuits is in civil liability. You know, proving damages and getting paid out, and you know, but the government has taken upon something that is very dangerous to the human race, and they're trying to spin it off. And I mean, you got so many pro fluoride people out there. It blows my mind. I'm like, what? How can you be pro fluoride, dude? It's a toxic. There's an MSDS sheet on it. You can't do it in the lab. You can't use it in the lab. You can't just drink fluoride, but in small amounts, it's good. You know, there's a lot of medicines in small amount that are good for you. Yeah, but the problem is it's in everything then at that point. It's even in your food, because why? They're watering the fields with fluorinated water. Then it gets in your food. It's in your toothpaste. It's in your dental products. Other dental products besides toothpaste. You go to the dentist, they're using fluoride. You get way too much. They showed in that study that even 1 part per million ended up being too much. And I think, now it's even more. I mean, we can look it up. What is the legal limit of fluoride in water? Maybe I'm just going to use search assist for this. 4 milligrams per liter. Wow, that's 4 parts per million, ppm. So that's 4 times the amount that the study in the 50s that showed 1 part per million was already causing fluorosis of the teeth. The federal legal limit is 4 milligrams per liter, which is 4 parts per million. That's 4 times the amount. But in reality, 0 is the only correct amount. So we have this toxic waste that's in our water that people are claiming is good for you because, you have to trust the science. Well, the issue that was seen in the documentary is that the scientists are getting paid and they're manufacturing the science. That's how science works. Very often, it's not objective. There is a monetary push behind proving something with science rather than discovering something. When they discovered it, they realized, this is a problem. Where does the fluoride
If you ask
chemicals
most
come
dentists
from?
and ask them what they're putting in the water, most dentists would say sodium fluoride, pharmaceutical sodium fluoride, the same stuff that is in toothpaste.
They have absolutely no idea that it's, in 9 out of 10 cases, hydrofluorosilicic acid, and that hydrofluorosilicic acid is a waste product for the phosphate industry.
This has come about because for maybe 100 years, the phosphate fertilizer industry put out 2 very, very poisonous gases into the environment, hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. Eventually, they were required to capture those, and they did it with a wet spray, water, and that water converts these 2 very toxic gases into hexafluorosilicic acid. And it's this scrubbing liquor, which is about 25% strong, is put into tanker trucks, driven around the country, and added to our drinking water.
This stuff goes out the stack. It's an air pollutant. If it goes directly into the water supply, if they would take that scrubber liquor and dump it into the local river, it's a water pollutant. But if they put it into a tank wagon and sell it to somebody, a water authority, like magic, it's not a pollutant. And they can take that then to your drinking water supply and not discharge it into your river. They discharge it directly into your drinking water supply, slowly bleed it in, and as magic. It's no longer a toxic pollutant. It's now what's called a product.
It's never purified. It's not a pharmaceutical grade compound. It's a mixture of whatever that collects in the stack gases. And it contains lots of contaminants, a lot of heavy metals.
When you're talking about adding fluoride to drinking water, you're not just talking about adding fluoridation chemicals. You're talking about adding all of the industrial waste byproducts that come along with it. In Oregon, where we've got 135 communities that already exceed the drinking water standards for arsenic, the idea of adding any more arsenic to drinking water, even if it's a small amount, just doesn't make a lot of sense. I find very few people who actually, with an open mind, read through the science, understand the significance of the questions and what the direction that all the new science is pointing in terms of the risks of fluoride, who still go on to say we ought to force it into everybody's drinking water.
We have better ways of improving dental health today than using fluoridation. And let's be sensible about it.
It doesn't work systemically. It works topically.
It is unethical, it is unnecessary, it's ineffective, it's dangerous.
I mean, this is so obvious. It's so really very, very far-fetched. You have the teeth there, they are available for you. Why drink the stuff?
That was a Nobel laureate in medicine saying it's obvious. And we can see from the studies done in the 50s that they were getting completely different results when they were discovering this stuff. But then guess what? The aluminum companies started paying scientists to prove that it's good for your teeth. So now they take what used to be a waste product that they shoot into the air and poison the air. Now they capture it with mist, combine it, put it in a tanker truck and sell it to your water company, your municipality. That's crazy. They're taking their toxic waste and then bleeding it into the water supply to increase their profit a little bit on the sacrifice of your body and your well-being. You know, this is great stuff, honestly. Like, people have done the work on the fluoride front. People have definitely done the work.
Waiting to see these pseudoscientists come out.
Okay, we're gonna watch this section right here.
In children or neurocognitive issues, it was at 1.2 or 1.5 milligrams per liter of, that was the concentration. The United States, we now do 0.7 milligrams per liter, but that's per liter. Okay, so how many liters of water do you drink a day? This is the controversy. So, for example, the American Academy of Pediatrics generally recommends pregnant women drink 2 to 3 liters a day. You might be cooking with fluoridated water, making your pasta, making your soup. How do we really know how much someone's getting exposed to? What's their body composition? How much do they weigh? What are the other outside sources of fluoride? Are they swallowing their toothpaste? Fluoride is in many pharmaceuticals because it helps increase bioavailability, especially SSRIs and Prilosec. A lot of these have fluoride in them.
Really?
Yes. Ultra-processed foods will have fluoride. So the factory that's making your Rockstar energy drink or your High C or whatever you're consuming, they're not using reverse osmosis to filter the water, so you're getting fluoride that way. It's naturally found in green tea and black tea, and this is not to make people worried about green and black tea. I still consume them. It's more to say, how are we really understanding how much is exposed to? And so they were finding that pregnant women, there's many studies now, but a famous one was the Rivka Green study out of Canada, and they followed about 520 mother-child pairs. They tested urinary fluoride in the mother per trimester, averaged it, and then followed these children to the age of 3 or 4 and did IQ tests and found that mothers who had higher concentrations of urinary fluoride, the children tested lower on their IQ test, up to 5 to 7 points, and that's on par with lead. Okay.
On par with lead.
On par with lead, yes. And so that was in 2019. There's been so many more studies now. So the judge ruled, EPA, you need to regulate this better. In that amount of time, there was a meta-analysis that came out that further supported the NTP report by JAMA Pediatrics, okay? And this is very controversial for these editors to be putting out, by the way, so I commend them. And also a Cochrane report came out, Cochrane Collaborative, which has said, this again was very recent, looking at all the data from water fluoridation isn't reducing decay like we thought it was. It's only reducing decay by about 1/4 a cavity per person. 1/4 of a cavity per person. So that's not statistically significant. So people will say, well, what gives? Why were cavity rates going down when we added fluoride to the water? Well, it's hard to say. Maybe they were already just going down due to education, more access to dental hygiene and toothbrushing, flossing. But also, we now have fluoride everywhere in our toothpaste. So fluoride was put in the water in the 1940s. It wasn't added to our toothpaste until the 1960s, and now it's everywhere. We get fluoride everywhere. Rinses, the varnishes that made you vomit at the office. And by the way, that's very common. That's very common, and it's because a lot of those fluoride varnishes, number one, fluoride, it does have a poison control label on it. You're not supposed to swallow it, but these varnishes also have polyurethane and hexane derivatives in them. It's what makes them so sticky.
Yeah, I still loathe going to the dentist.
I know
I think
that
it's because of
flavor.
that early association. Yeah.
So it's very controversial, and unfortunately, we've lost sight of the science. It's getting buried in politics right now, and it really upsets me because it's not a political issue. We just need to look at the data, and I feel like we're losing sight of the scientific method. The American Dental Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics is doubling down.
If she had just listened to the presentation that I put right now, it's not like we're losing the science. The science was there in the 1940s and 50s, and they started fluorinating the reservoirs in the 1950s, but the science been there. It proved it years ago. This stuff is dangerous. It's dangerous for IQs. It's dangerous for cancer and health and well-being. And for a generation, we've been putting this inside of our water. There's no losing the scientific method. The scientific method was thrown out for aluminum profits, which I get it. We need to make stuff with aluminum, but we don't need to take from industry. We don't need to take the toxic waste and start putting it in our drinking water. I don't think that's smart. I don't think that's good. I think that's dangerous. I think if we were to do anything in this world, we need to bring an end to adding toxic waste to American drinking water. That's what's going on. Fluoride is good for your teeth. Well, what type of fluoride are you actually getting? And it doesn't have a bunch of other garbage mixed in with it because they kind of just capture it in the smokestacks, combine it with water, put it in tanker trucks and sell it as a product. And then just pour it in your drinking water for your kids so you can bathe in it. That's what's going on. But we're in a time, they want to bring this to end. JFK wants to bring this to end, and I applaud him, man, because this is not one of the greatest medical things we've ever done. This is a massive crime against the American people, and it's made us dumber and more cancerous, and it's actually ruined our teeth and jacked our teeth up because it's way too much.
The Senate will hold a confirmation hearing for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., President-elect Trump's pick to run the Department of Health and Human Services. His nomination has raised alarms among health officials, with Kennedy expressing skepticism of vaccines and vowing that the incoming administration will advise all U.S. water systems to stop adding fluoride to their water supplies. Some cities have already made the move, voting to remove fluoride from their drinking water. Our CBS News Confirmed team visited one of those communities in Oregon. Lana Zach has the story.
Before water enters your home, it typically comes from a local water source, one like this. the Sal Santiam, which flows into Lebanon, Oregon's water treatment facility.
We pump water from this tank here to the distribution system is what carries water to the houses.
Here, water goes through multiple steps of purification.
This is the fluoride room here at the City of Lebanon. As you can see all of the caution signs, we use a fluorosilicic acid at a dose of 0.7 milligrams per liter. So we have to wear protective clothing. You don't want this stuff on your skin.
7 ppm.
But recently, the fluoride in Lebanon was stopped after a nearby reservoir drawdown mandated by the Army Corps of Engineers increased the muddiness or turbidity of the water. Public interest in the water supply spiked.
We had some color issues and stuff like that with the quality of the raw water.
One resident, Lindsay Pearson, began reading up on something unrelated to the turbidity of the water: fluoride.
I am a healthcare worker. I am a nurse. I'm also a mom, and I'm educated here in America. I can read articles and peer-reviewed information, and I can understand when there is a risk.
For some in the community, like Pearson, fluoride seemed like an example of government overreach. So she rallied neighbors on conservative-aligned social media channels, and they spread their message at a local donut shop.
We ended up getting in touch with one of the lawyers that was actually involved with Fluoride Action Network. He gave us different documents about neurotoxicity and different things related to our cause. And so that's kind of where the ball got rolling.
Armed with a fluoride data sheet, they pointed at studies that seemed to counter the mainstream consensus on water fluoridation.
Fluoride toothpaste.
And as the debate spread, organizations like the American Dental Association weighed in. The ADA says fluoride, which has been in use for more than 75 years, prevents at least 25% of tooth decay in children and is safe at the level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is the amount that Lebanon had been using. The debate went all the way up to the city council, which was also divided.
Every time somebody would send something to the council for us to have as information, it looked like sales brochures.
The town voted, and by less than a 4-point difference, the people of Lebanon voted to remove their fluoride.
I'm a firm believer in giving people their own voice and their own choice in how they focus on their health. Personally, I don't think there's a safe level for any kind of a toxic chemical in my water.
But that view was not fully shared by everyone. Sean Edinger, a former Navy engineer, voted to keep the fluoride in the water.
If you trust the government, the consensus is clear. If you run in other circles that don't trust the government, that don't trust the CDC,
fluorinated,
then obviously they're going to throw all that data and science out the window.
We put the question to dentists. Some didn't want to be interviewed because of the divisiveness of the issue, but Dr. Highfam, an ADA member dentist and Oregon State representative, says he can see clearly the difference in his patients' teeth.
I believe in it. It's a safe thing to use.
Another town he works in, Hillsborough, isn't fully fluoridated.
Is there anything that is hurting?
So in my Hillsborough office, I do see a higher number of patients that do have cavities. When they do have the cavities are a lot bigger, it's more severe.
And as the debate over water fluoridation spreads to other communities, more towns will have to choose.
Every city.
Oh, they have more cavities. Don't worry about the lower IQ or the cancer or the bone decay or any of that. The cavities. Oh. No, dude. That stuff is horrible. It should not be in our water at all. Our drinking water. That's the issue here. It's really about this stuff is drinking water. So there's like a bunch of these pro-fluoride people. This woman is definitely fluorinated. Let's see what she says.
Fluoride is a toxic fertilizer byproduct. Ew. It's time for...
Also aluminum and several other industries.
Fluoride fact check. This claim appears often in anti-fluoride circles, and while it sounds alarming without context, the truth is that the origin of fluoride does not determine its safety. Like anything, its chemical form and dosage matter most. Here's an analogy.
So are those tanker trucks being checked for purity?
To explain. Acetic acid, a substance too harsh to consume on its own, becomes vinegar after it's diluted and processed. Fluoride in its industrial form of, say, fluorosilicic acid might seem concerning, but once it's purified and regulated, it becomes a safe, beneficial substance used in drinking water. The key takeaway here is that the refining and diluting process transforms unsafe chemical compounds into safe and useful substances.
Yeah, but the problem here is they don't purify it. They don't use dental grade fluorine. They don't do that. They just literally capture this stuff from the vents, mist it, combine it. It turns into a 25% sludge that they then put into tanker trucks and sell to your municipality. That's what's happening. It's not this purified and diluted. And the studies from the 50s showed 1 part per million was enough to cause damage to teeth. Oh, but the dentists, they have less cavities. The studies and the science were there 70 years ago. And they proved that the aluminum industry was behind it 70 years ago.
And it's essential to understand this happens with many other substances that we use daily. It's all about what their final form is, rather than focusing on their raw, unrefined state. In both examples of acetic acid diluted with water turning into vinegar and fluorosilicic acid diluted with water turning into fluoride, these byproducts, once processed, are perfectly safe and beneficial for us. Another example is table salt, NaCl. It comes from either evaporated seaweed or mined rock, which contains contaminants.
Nah. This woman's done. She's incorrect. She has not actually questioned it. But we know somebody who has questioned it. And
RFK,
hate him or love him, he's getting food dyes out. He's getting certain pesticides in check. And now he's going after the fluoride.
Jr. is now moving forward with one of his top priorities as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, pushing to change CDC guidance to no longer recommend adding fluoride to public drinking water.
In the era of fluoridated toothpastes and mouthwashes, it makes no sense to have fluoride in our water.
On Monday, Utah becoming the first state in the country to ban fluoride from its drinking water systems, and more could soon follow suit. About 2/3 of the American public drink water with fluoride in it. It was added to drinking water in the 1900s to help prevent tooth decay.
And we have seen a 25% reduction in terms of tooth decay by putting fluoride in the water. And it is a low-cost opportunity to really...
That's incorrect. 1/4 of one cavity.
Eliminate health disparities for individuals who may not be able to get to the dentist.
But critics like RFK Jr. point to a report from the National Toxicology Program last year that found some evidence of lower IQ in children who had higher levels of fluoride exposure. But none of the children tested were in the U.S., and their exposure was twice the CDC's recommended limit for U.S. drinking water. The report also said more research is needed to see if those small doses recommended in the U.S. can cause harm, and that no cause and effect was found between fluoride exposure and lower IQ.
This is not the greatest research in terms of quality, that there may be a possible association with fluoride in...
These people missed out on the 1950s, man. After World War II, there was a tremendous amount of study done on fluoride, and they considered it exceedingly toxic. And that stuff got buried. There's not enough science. We need more science. All the science was there 70 years ago, but guess what? They paid the scientists to prove otherwise. And then they paid Edward Bernays, the master of marketing, mass manipulation. They paid him to sell the American public fluoride in your tap water to poison your children, bathe your children in poison. That's crazy. And all these smart, dumb people are going around saying there's not enough science. What, people weren't as smart in the 1950s? They were brilliant back then. They could figure this stuff out with less advanced technology. They could prove this stuff in the early 1900s, figured out it was fluoride in the water that was causing the fluorination, gave it a name. and then connected it to aluminum production. That's crazy to me. These people are just, it's like they're not trying. I mean, I'm just on here doing a research, like a simple live stream research, and I'm able to find the studies and find stuff back from the 1950s. Simple people had already compiled the information, and if I spent, maybe a couple days or a week looking at this, I could figure out if it damaged IQs or not. And it's already clear. They did a test in 1950. They tested 2 cities, one fluorinated, one not. Why don't these people have access to these studies? These brilliant people can't figure out that it was already figured out years ago. It causes cancer, bone decay, and a reduction in IQ. And this is part of a meta-analysis, but I'll just skip to the results. 14 recent cross-section studies from endemic areas with naturally high fluoride concentration in groundwater supported the previous findings of cognitive deficiency in children with elevated fluoride exposures. Now, she was saying there's people with 2 or 3 times the federal limit of fluoride, which was already 7 times more than enough to cause problems. 1 part per million can cause serious problems. Then the national is 4. And then these people were getting 7, and some of them were getting 14 parts per million. Way above and that doesn't even, you don't have any clue what's in the sludge. Oh, when it's purified and diluted, it ain't purified. They're not going to pay money to clean up their toxic waste to then sell it as a product when they could just sell it as a product anyway, and they'll dilute it in the public water. You don't make any money cleaning stuff up and purifying stuff when you don't have to, and there's no law forcing you to do it. There's no oversight around fluoridation at all. So, 3 recent prospective studies from Mexico and Canada with individual exposure data showed that early life exposures were negatively associated with children's performance on cognitive tests. Neurotoxicity appears to be dose dependent, and tentative benchmarks dose calculations suggest that the safe exposures are likely to be below current accepted or recommended fluoride concentrations in drinking water. The recent epidemiological results support the notion that elevated fluoride intake during early development can result in IQ deficiency that may be considerable. Man. Oh, but we need more science because we got to keep putting poison in our water. If we put more poison in our water, the science will prove it's okay. No, man, it's not okay. It's all bad. So this is a big study. I'm not like an expert in the fluorination area, but these people are. This is the Fluoride Action Network. So they're doing great work. Follow them online. The NTP report on fluoride neurotoxicity. So, sounds pretty important, right? The National Toxicology Program, established in 1978, is the research arm of the U.S. regulatory agencies and is best known for its reports on carcinogens. The NTP comes under the aegis of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, an agency that's been able to perform good science amidst a battlefield of conflicting interagency interests. Well, that always makes it hard to find the real science. The NIEHS comes under the umbrella of the National Institute of Health, NIH. In 2015, the NTP solicited a request for information in the Federal Register on fluoride's carcinogenicity, development, neurotoxicity, and endocrine disruption. FAN submitted comments, and the NTP made a decision to investigate fluoride's neurotoxicity. In December 2015, even though that was done in the 50s, clearly and succinctly already had a definitive answer on that in the 50s, long before, years before it was added to all these reservoirs around the nation. They already knew it. In December 2015, an evaluation of fluoride exposure and potential of development neurobehavioral effects was presented by Christina Thayer, PhD of the Office of Health Assessment and Translation, OHAT. It's these acronyms. NTP's Board of Scientific Counselors, Dr. Lisa Peterson, chair of the NTP BSC, said the priority of the project ranged from medium to high. In 2016, the NTP began a systematic review of fluoride's neurotoxicity in humans called a monograph at the request of FAN. This was the first time that any government undertook this task, except in the 1950s. The NTP spent 3 years on the monograph and asked the National Academy of Science, Engineers, and Medicine to peer review their work. So they got a draft in 2019 and 2020. So, okay, this is kind of a long team. Okay, let's. Oh, it's saying in February 9th, 2021, the NTP reversed course and stated in a private statement not released to the press or the public that it would not complete its systematic review. Instead, NTP would do a state of the science document on fluoride's neurotoxicity. This report is expected to be released at the end of March 2022. Conclusion that fluoride is presumed to be a cognitive neurodevelopment hazard to humans. Thus, it will have no teeth compared to a systemic review. So, emails reveal suppression of government report on fluoride and brain. So, this is another video.
I think the email.
Let's watch a little bit of this. See what
emails make it pretty clear what happened.
Right.
That the conclusions, the scientific conclusions of the NTP were not sufficiently compatible with the policy interests of water fluoridation.
Right.
And that the NIDCR and the CDC, which are principally concerned with promoting this policy, found that unacceptable. They went up the ladder to the Assistant Secretary of Health and convinced the Assistant Secretary to order the NTP to not release the report. That's what happened. On May 11th, 2022, NTP sends another email to the CDC and the NIDCR telling them the report is coming out next week, May 18th, okay? And that email was sent at 11:12 a.m.
Right.
There is a whole flurry of emails for the remainder of that day and into the next few days by the CDC and the NIDCR and the Assistant Secretary of Health and the Office of the Director at NIH. All of them talking about, oh my, what are we gonna do? Like, they were freaked out, okay? 2 minutes after the email that the NTP sent on May 11th, a director at CDC, Karen Hacker, forwards the announcement and says, we need to get on this ASAP. Please move this forward immediately. So CDC is concerned, okay? And within 5 hours on that day, May 11th, NTP's director, Richard Wojcik, emails his colleagues at the NTP with the disappointing news that, quote, just received word that Admiral Levine wants an official HHS review and clearance of the report before it goes out. So that's within 6 hours of the announcement that the NTP is going to publish this report next week. Nope, the Assistant Secretary of Health wants to review it. So things are on hold, okay? Later that night, May 11th at 10:05 p.m., Tara Schwetz in the Office of the Director for NIH, she's the acting principal deputy director, she emails Lawrence Tabek And in her email, she says, there is no way this is going out on May 18th. We're meeting tomorrow and we'll discuss more. Before it goes out, we will need to clear it and brief the Assistant Secretary of Health. So the Office of the Director is saying, yeah, there's no way we're going to allow this report.
We're not going to let this go.
Yeah. The next morning, the director of CDC's Division of Oral Health, Casey Hannon, attends a meeting with NTP, the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Health, and the Office of Director of NIH. And he emails others at CDC with his takeaways from the meeting. This is, okay. And he writes, the May 18th release date for the NTP report is almost certainly not going to happen. The Assistant Secretary of Health Office and NIH Office of Director are pretty clearly going to get more involved, okay? Which is what the NIDCR and CDC had been wanting, right?
Right.
They wanted to get the higher level authorities at HHS involved to quash this thing,
Right.
okay? So they were getting traction.
Right.
They could see that their work was paying off,
Yeah.
right? That same day, May 12th, the CDC has another meeting with the private dental lobbyists.
Wow.
Okay? Greg Holder, the CDC policy analyst, at this meeting, he starts talking to them about the NTP report and what's going on. But he asks that this discussion be, quote, off the record. Do you know why the CDC provided the information, quote, off the record?
No, I do not.
So what he had to say to them on that day was, quote, off the record. So we don't have minutes of what he said or notes of what he said, okay? The next day, Greg Holder at the CDC speaks with Judy Feinstein and Chris Wood, who are the leadership of this group that I talked about earlier, ASTDD. This is the group funded by CDC to promote fluoridation,
Right.
okay? Greg Holder has a phone call with them, and he tells them, quote, CDC officials, Assistant Secretary for Health Rachel Levine, and others have looked at the NTP report and are pushing back hard at NTP. So Greg Holder's words are, we are, quote, pushing back hard at NTP. Holder also notes in that meeting that the NTP is, quote, really digging in and standing by their report. God forbid. The NTP is standing by its report. Fast forward to June 3rd, and you have emails from the CDC that confirm that the Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine, made a decision to put the report on hold. As one email says, quote, the latest we heard yesterday is that Assistant Secretary of Health Levine has put the report on hold until further notice. Now, Rachel Levine is the one who ultimately made the decision to put the NTP monograph on hold, right?
Objection, Wax Foundation.
I don't know that personally. I would imagine, I mean, because of her position, she may have the ultimate authority to do that.
But you were specifically told by the CDC that Rachel Levine made the decision, right?
I have been told that Rachel Levine made that decision.
Right, and you were told that by CDC leadership, right?
Objection made.
It could have been the CDC.
So they succeeded. The obstructionists, if you will, succeeded in quashing the report.
Absolutely. So
yeah, so the fluorination process can continue to poison you and your family and your children. Would hate for the science to actually get out that proves it's dangerous, but you know, history's lost unless somebody digs it up. Would be a shame if people found out the truth, but you know, I think fluorination and fluoride, the way it's being used now and the way that it's being pitched versus how it's actually being used, I think it's really bad, personally. I think it's dangerous. I think it reduces kids' IQs. I think it causes problems to the body. I think it causes problems to the brain. You're getting way too much of it too often in too many different areas. So what do you think? I don't know. But anywho, this is a little breakdown on fluoride. There's definitely so much more to look at, but I mean, it feels like you saw a little bit of the past, the present, and the future, and looks like they're gonna make a recommendation to stop fluorinating the nation's water, which will be a massive improvement to people's health and well-being. You want to get fluoride? Go to the dentist. That dentist obviously loves it. You can go get it from him. He'll put it all up in your mouth, you know? You can get fluorinated toothpaste if you want. I wouldn't recommend it, but hey, it's your choice. But when it comes to the water, it's not our choice. I have to pay money to go get water because the water I have is not trustworthy. It's toxic. That's against my will. I don't want fluoride in my water at all. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? So that's it. Keep fighting. Talk to you soon.